And then there comes a moment when the storm settles. The dark feminine is no longer something she fights, but something she wears. The world still misunderstands, still whispers, still tries to punish her refusal to perform. But she no longer trembles because she has learned the final lesson. A woman who carries her shadow stops begging for light. Jung called this individuation the alchemical process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, but complete in her contradictions. She contains both the goddess and the witch, the nurturer and the destroyer, the love that heals and the fire that clears. This is why she unnerves people. A woman who knows her own depth cannot be controlled. A woman who has met her darkness cannot be shamed. A woman who has faced her own solitude will never again confuse attention for love.so when they ask her why she's alone. She no longer explains when they call her too intense. She no longer softens when they mistake her silence for emptiness. She lets them, because the dark feminine is not wounded as a compass, and it has led her here to a life that does not ask her to abandon herself, to relationships that do not require her sacrifice, to a voice that no longer shakes when it says, "This is who I am." This is the secret Jung tried to teach us. The dark feminine was never the enemy. She was the key, and if this truth echoes in your bones, if you feel the weight of what you've been told to suppress, then you are already remembering. The world may not be ready for her, but your.so take up the space they said you didn't deserve. Speak the words they told you to swallow. Choose the solitude they called loneliness and discover, at last, what it really means to be free. If this touched something in you, share it with another woman who is ready to awaken. Because the dark feminine doesn't just transform individuals, she changes the world, one reclaimed woman at a time. But here is where the story turns, because the dark feminine does not emerge gracefully. She does not rise like a moon, serene and predictable. She claws her way out through rage, through grief, through the kind of sorrow that feels like dying. Jung called this the shadow work, the descent into the parts of ourselves we have been taught to hate. For a woman, this is not just about facing her anger or her desires. It is about confronting the lie that she must be good before she is real. Think of the last time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace. The time you softened your voice to avoid being called difficult. The time you let someone take from you because giving was the only way you knew how to be loved. That is the conditioning the dark feminine dismantles, and it hurts because the world does not reward a woman for her honesty. It rewards her for her compliance. When she begins to say no, relationships fracture. When she stops people pleasing, she is called selfish. When she chooses herself, others will whisper that she has changed as if growth were a betrayal. But Jung understood this rebellion was necessary. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, he wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. And so the dark feminine is not a phase. She is a reckoning. She is the moment a woman realizes she has spent her life loving others at the expense of herself and decides, finally, to stop. She is the quiet fury of boundaries set, the grief of outgrowing people who only loved her when she was small, the terrifying joy of belonging to herself. This is why the dark feminine is feared. Not because she destroys, but because she liberates. And liberation is the one thing a controlled woman is never supposed to want. Have you ever met a woman who unsettles you not because she is cruel, but because she is complete? The kind of woman who moves through the world with a quiet intensity, who does not apologize for her solitude, who refuses to shrink into the roles others have written for her. Carl Jung called this the dark feminine, not evil, not sinister, but hidden. The part of a woman's psyche that society has tried to bury, the part that does not seek permission, the part that knows its own worth without being told. This is not about rebellion. It is about remembrance. Jung warned that when a woman denies This aspect of herself, when she suppresses her depth to fit into the light, palatable mold the world demands of her, she does not become safer. She becomes fractured. And the shadow she refuses to face will surface anyway in her relationships, in her dreams, in the quiet moments when she wonders why she feels so empty, despite doing everything right, but the woman who has met her own darkness? She is different. She is the one who can say no without explanation. The one who does not cling to love, but chooses it. The one who understands that loneliness is not the absence of others, but the absence of herself, and so she returns. Again and again, she returns. What the world calls cold, Jung might call contained. What it calls difficult, he might name whole, because here is the truth so many refuse to see. The dark feminine is not a monster. It is the unlit path to a woman's sovereignty. It is the part of her that knows sacrifice is not the same as love, that silence is not the same as peace. That being needed is not the same as being valued, and when she embraces this, when she stops performing the endless labor of being liked and starts the real work of being free, the world will recoil. It will call her too much, too intense, too independent, too alone, but she will smile because she knows the secret. Aloneness is not her punishment. It is her power. The dark feminine is not something to fear. It is something to reclaim, and if you feel this stirring in you, if you recognize the weight of what has been buried, then you are already remembering.